And welcome to a quick review edition on a 6th grade social studies topic, the end of our unit on ancient Greece and things you should know about the legacy of ancient Greece before we move on to the next unit. First of all, your teacher's probably going to have a wide array of questions, and I've posted the first 10 questions of my test review for your study efforts. Number 1, let's jump right into it. The blank war was the beginning of the decline of ancient Greece. I offer my students 4 choices: Peloponnesian, Anglican, Spartan, and Trojan. And it was the Peloponnesian War. This 3-phase war between Athens and Sparta and their allies was the beginning of the decline of ancient Greece. And although it was one of Sparta's biggest victories, it was one of the most costly for the Greeks as a whole. And number 2, a blank is a story that symbolizes morality for life in ancient Greece. Haiku, soliloquy, myth, or sonnet. And the ancient Greeks were known for their myths, which were then later adopted by the Romans and made their own. The word number 3, high city, is the translation in English. What is the term in Greek? And that would be the Acropolis. Number 4, the highest ranking of the ancient Greek gods. Who was it? There were so many to remember, but Zeus, of course, the highest ranking, the king or the top of the gods and goddesses, if you will. Number 5, the Polis that we think of as the birthplace of democracy, of course, is Athens. We'll cover more of the study guide in just a bit, but let's just take some big picture notifications on things that your teacher probably wants you to know, ending the unit on ancient Greece. We owe so much of our literacy and literature development in English language arts from the Greeks. This includes the way we function grammar and form sandwiches. Of course, that would be as if we were cooking, but sentences is what I was thinking of. You could tell we just had dinner. And the modern alphabet, historical writing, democratic government, all of these trace their roots to ancient Greece. If you're asked about medicine, you should know about Hippocrates, the Hippocratic Oath that we still use today, applying scientific thinking to medicine, and this code of ethics saying that doctors should do no harm. Centuries later, Greek medical students also made discoveries about the heart and the brain. So there's a lot going on there, but the Hippocratic Oath is something that becomes relevant to our everyday lives here in our modern world. In mathematics, Pythagoras and Euclid made important advances in geometry that are still taught today. Astronomy, geography, so many things that you could talk about that we read and that we learned about in this unit, as well as biology, architecture, theater, and sports. So much classic Greek knowledge becomes very relevant to the Western way of life of today. Back to the study guide for a few more points before we head out of here. Why was access to the sea beneficial for Athens? Cultural diffusion is something that I've told my 6th graders all the way up through their middle school graduation. When people are able to travel from place to place over these long voyages, land, sea, any way that you do it, you're going to end up spending a lot of time with these people and exchanging not just goods, but ideas. So cultures could rub off on each other, influence, benefit, innovate. And it's required countries to give of themselves and take the best from other cultures as well. So Athens was able to bring back ideas, reshape their democracy, bring in more thoughts, and bring in not just trade, but push their own culture to various other regions of the world where it would blend and become a part of other cultures. 7, 8, and 9, I have a little Sparta Athens back and forth, the two most known polis. Which one is better for women to live in? It's actually Sparta. They had more rights, they were freer there. Which one was better to live in if you were physically weak? Well, neither particularly, but you wouldn't want to be weak in Sparta because you would be left out and you would not be a functional part of society. So Athens is the better place because you could get by with your thoughts, your education, and your wisdom. Number 9, which was the better polis for warriors? That, of course, would be Sparta, where you would be valued and treasured and have a chance to make an impact on the great Spartan way of life. And number 10, which was sometimes brutal, by the way, 2 aspects of literature or language that we credit to ancient Greece, and we listed a lot to kick off the podcast today. We talked about grammar, drama, historical writing, the alphabet, and democratic roots. Look, this is just the tip of the iceberg for ancient Greece. We've been studying it in our class for over a month. We've talked about so much. We've talked about theater, architecture, buildings, cultures, stories, and much, much more, and I'm sure you have as well. Any questions? Tweet us your questions at Hauger History on Twitter, and we'll be glad to answer them. And this is Mr. Hauger saying thank you for joining us for another edition of the Hauger History Podcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes absolutely free. Comment in the section if you think we've got anything wrong or something that you've learned that you want to share with the rest of the class. And until later in the next edition, thanks so much for listening. I am Mr. Hauger, and we'll see you on the next edition of the Hauger History Podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody.